Hello, today I'll be teaching you guys about the surface area of composite three-dimensional shapes. Now, what is surface area of the composite 3D shape? This branches off into two different definitions. Number one, surface area, which means added area of faces on a particular shape. For example, 8 times 6 plus 5 times 6. And then the composite 3D shape, two or more three-dimensional shapes joined to form a new shape, which in this case is a rectangular prism added by a triangular prism. Now, the big question is, how can we find the surface area? Surface area of a particular shape can be found by calculating the area of faces in a shape using different formulas depending on the two-dimensional shape of the faces and adding all the calculation towards the end. Now, some of these examples of these formulas may include the surface area of a cube, which is 6L squared. The surface area of a sphere, which is 4 pi r squared. The surface area of a cylinder, which is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi rh. And last but not least, the surface area of a cone, which is pi r squared plus pi rl. Now, coming up to our first example, we have a figure which in the question asks, find the surface area of this figure, which must be answered in centimeters and 2 decimal points. Now, from what we can see here is that we can see there are two rectangular prisms stuck together, and now we have to find out the area of these outside faces. Let's go to the next slide and see how we do it. To find the surface area of this particular figure, we can follow these three simple steps. Number one, identify the amount of faces within the shape. Number two, calculate the area of each face within the shape. Number three, add all the results together to find the surface area. Now, from what I can say is that it is most preferably to do to maybe divide this particular face in half so it is easier to calculate. And also, I do not think that we should divide the bottom because it will be much easier if we just keep it a whole, because it will be 20 times 6. However, let's find out in the next slide. Alright, now to solve this particular problem, we have identified that there are 10 faces after the shape has been divided to find a solution easier. Now, as we mentioned before, that I have divided this face here, these two, so that we can find the surface area easier for these two particular shapes and that one on the other side. However, we did not divide the bottom, the base of this composite shape, because it will be easier for us. It will be 20 times 6. Anyways, the formula used to find the surface area for this prism is 6 times 6 times 2, due to them being 2, 15 times 6 times 3, because there are 3 here, here, and here, 20 times 6 for the base, 14 times 6 times 3, because there is the top one, the sides, and last but not least, 9 times 6. Now, after you've find the calculations for each of those areas, you add them all together and you'll find the surface area for this particular shape is 768 centimeters squared. Alright guys, now we're up to example number 2. This question looks like it's slightly harder than the first one because it is consisting of 3 different three-dimensional shapes, which includes a cube, a cylinder, and a hemisphere. Now let's read the question. Find the surface area of this figure. Answer must be in centimeters and 2 decimal points. Alright, now let's go to the next slide and see how we do this. To figure out the surface area for this three-dimensional composite shape, we can follow these 3 simple steps. Number 1, divide to 3 shapes to smoothen the process of calculating the surface area. So what we can see here, we can divide the hemisphere, the cylinder, and the cube so that it is much more easier for us to figure out the surface area of each shape. Now, the next step is to find the surface area of each different shape, and the last is to add all the calculations to solve the particular problem, which is finding the surface area of this composite shape. Alright guys, now we're up to the last segment of the video, and in this particular segment I will show you guys the surface area of this three-dimensional composite shape. As I said earlier, it will be easier for us to divide this shape into different parts so that we can find the surface area easier, which I did. I divided into the cube, a cylinder, and a hemisphere, which is shown here. Now for the surface area of the cube, I did 14 times 14 times 5, which is these faces except for the top part, and 14 times 14 minus 3.5 squared. Why did I do that? The reason being is because the top part is covered by a circle. Now to find the area of the top part, the top circle, we have to find the area and then minus it by the area of the circle, which is this 3.5 squared times pi. That will give you 1137.52 centimeters squared. Now for the surface area of the cylinder, it is not a regular cylinder where you count the top parts, the circles of the cylinders. However, because it is covered by the hemisphere and this cube, we have to minus those parts out. So we only come up with the equation of 7 times pi times 3, which are the sides, this particular cylinder side that is showing. If you do that in your calculator, that will show you 65.97 centimeters squared. Now for the last part, is this the hemisphere? Okay, and since it is a hemisphere, not a sphere, we have to times it by 2 instead of 4, like the original equation. So we did 2 times pi times 6.5 squared minus 3.5 squared times pi. Now why did I do this part again? The reason being is because there's a circle that's been covered due to the cylinder. And to find the surface area of this hemisphere, you have to minus it by the covered circle. Now if you type that into the calculator, you'll get 226.98 centimeters squared. Now for the last part, the total area of this composite shape will be 1137.52 plus 65.97 plus 226.98, which gives you the total area of 1430.47 centimeters squared. And there it is guys. Thank you for listening, and I hope this video educated you guys, and thank you. Have a nice day.